Chainsaw Man is a series that, on the surface, or to those who just refuse to pay attention, seems like it's primarily focused on being as lowbrow as possible. Violence, sexual content, and innuendos, as well as all sorts of horrifying scenarios, splatter across the page of Tatsuki Fujimoto's work. However, to me, it's a series that means a lot. It actually made me rethink how I should approach my writing and creative process and just general approach to art. It also helps that it was one of those few things that helped me get through COVID. That and Call Me If You Get Lost by Tyler, the Creator. Chainsaw Man is a work that pretty much breaks as many rules as it can when it comes to shonen battle manga traditions and stereotypes. Complex battle system? No, it's pretty simple actually. Form a large cast of beloved side characters? No, they get killed all pretty fast actually. Though one thing it handles very differently from other series is the theme of companionship. Now, friendship is a common theme in many series. One Piece, Naruto, Dragon Ball, and even JoJo's all have themes of working together and camaraderie to pull through a tough situation. However, it's always handled from the sense of friendship. Chainsaw Man does something a bit different, instead focusing on themes of loneliness and forming bonds that are genuine. Not to say that the bonds in any other series are superficial in any way, but Fujimoto handles his relationships in a way that feel, well, more human. They're messy, complicated, even painful at times. Sure, sometimes it's played up for laughs, but many times it's used to create great character work, examinations, and even great conflict. So to show you all what I mean, I'll choose to focus on one arc from Chainsaw Man Part 1. I also want to add here, I've not finished the series by the time I finish this video, so if you can, I'd appreciate it if you don't put spoilers about it. You know, just so everyone can have a healthy conversation. Plus, I'd like to find that out on my own. I'm not gonna yell at you or anything like that if you do, it's just a minor inconvenience is all it is. Anyways, today I'll focus on one arc. That being the Blood Devil arc, and how it explores the deeper themes of companionship, desire, and loneliness within the series. To start, this is a pretty short arc at the start of the series, going from chapters 5 to 12. Thus, this story also introduces us to many of the elements of the world that we haven't learned yet. Like, for example, the ideas of contracts and some slightly deeper exploration on Denji and his powers as a hybrid. But other than that, this arc holds a lot of dramatic weight towards Denji as well as Power, basically forcing them to work together and see their personalities clash. Which happens quickly because they are both headstrong and, quite frankly, kinda stupid. That's not me being harsh. Fujimoto writes both of them to be incredibly impulsive and not think things through. One of the best moments of this being when Power immediately tries to throw Denji under the bus so that she could avoid the consequences of killing a devil that they weren't assigned to kill. Honestly, Chainsaw Man is a series that has better comedic chops than many other shonen because the humor is very character-driven. Sure, you have your typical absurdist humor you get in Japanese media, as well as some raunchier jokes, but a lot of the humor is so character-driven. It's not simply little moments of the characters being obtuse or dumb for the sake of a gag. No, usually the jokes center around each character's personalities and how they make certain situations even more absurd. I'd say it's comparable to South Park actually, which is even funnier when you learn that Fujimoto himself said Power was inspired by Eric Cartman. That's real, by the way, you could Google that yourself. But this arc also does a Chainsaw Man staple that more or less is brought into the limelight here, starting out with something that's a bit more absurd or comedic sounding, and then somehow grounding it within something a bit more sincere. The push behind this arc is Denji wanting to touch, well, boobs. He wants to touch boobs. Look, if you haven't read Chainsaw Man, I know that sounds insane, but let me explain. Denji, as introduced in the first 4 chapters, more or less grew up alone. No father, no mother, no family, except for a small, cute devil named Pochita. He never really had anything else than that, and now as a teen, he's 16 at the start of the series, he wants to experience the things he never got to. And the first thing on that list is to touch some boobs. On paper, it sounds stupid, even childish, something a teenager with no lived experience would want, but we'll examine this more as the story unfolds. Denji and Power being forced together creates a moment, just a moment, where Power puts her walls down a bit. She talks about one of the few genuine relationships she ever had, which, for a fiend like her, a fiend is a devil inside of a human body, is practically unheard of. She had a deep connection with her cat Meowie, who was taken away by a devil and she dearly wants him back. And here is where we get the main push of our plot. If Denji gets Meowie back for Power, she'll let him touch her boobs. Of course, story writing 101, this does not go as planned and things get complicated, focusing on Denji trying to kill this bat devil. And man, we get some great action out of it. Fujimoto just does some incredible panel work here. To talk about his art for a moment, it has this sketch-like feeling to it that I just adore. It's not trying to be super pristine or proper, instead choosing this rugged, jagged style that can be warm and comforting when needed, having a sort of controlled messiness that makes it feel human and close. Of course, when the action hits, Fujimoto is more than willing to draw some badass blood, guts, and stylized violence of all sorts. Plus, the way he draws horror is phenomenal, getting down sometimes even the most abstract and terrifying fears, and personifying it very well onto the page. Just look at how he draws the Bat Devil inside this house. this looming shadow in a cramped space. It's like any moment it'll break free and cause havoc on anyone who sees it. But how it keeps itself here is drawn to be very unnerving as it hides in shadow. Of course, we get a classic double cross, which goes to reinforce the classic trope of don't trust demons. The Bat Devil chooses to swallow power in Meowie whole, and leaves Denji to solve the issue, thus leading us into an interesting moment. Denji fighting like a desperate animal to get back power and her cat safely because it's his dream to touch some boobs. And honestly, while his dream may be dumb, you can't help but admire his tenacity. Of course, he does sort of toss aside the safety for others for his goal, even throwing a car with a civilian inside it to get a leg up in the fight, which paints Denji in a much more unique light than most shonen protagonists. Usually, shonen protags go to dark places when they're really pushed to or made to by external forces. Think Gon in Hunter x Hunter, or Naruto and how he struggles with the nine-tailed fox inside of him. No, there wasn't an extreme external push for Denji to be so desperate. This is just how he is, painting Denji as, still in many ways, this scared and angry, isolated kid who's afraid of having his dream stripped from him before he can even have it. And after a bloody battle, he finally saves Power and Meowie. Though during this fight, we see Power questioning Denji's motives. I mean, she does betray him, and to her it's just boobs, it's nothing special. Why would he keep pushing for this? Why save her? It can't just be that, right? But before we could sit in this too long, a very intriguing moment happens. The Bat Devil's girlfriend appears, a slug devil, and now wants to kill and eat Denji and everyone else involved. Now, this is inherently funny on paper. A demon who just gets slaughtered out of nowhere and has a girlfriend, and now is all the times when she decides to appear. Yet, Fujimoto doesn't do this purely for laughs. Once again, Denji mentions his dream and the devil laughs in his face. Of which, Denji starts up a dream battle, as he calls it. Basically, whose ever dream is better will be proven in battle. Which, again, sounds like a traditional shonen battle trope, but Denji was heavily weakened from the last fight, and interestingly, Denji loses. He just gets completely bodied, and Aki has to come in to save him. Also, just real quick, this panel is really damn cool. I mean, look at that. But yeah, on Denji's own words alone, that would mean his dream was flat, bad, or not worth fighting for. So when we get to the end of the arc, and Power actually offers him to touch her breasts, Fujimoto takes it into, in my opinion, the best direction he could. Denji's disappointed. Left with a sense of emptiness, he genuinely thought that this would make him feel better, but it just leaves him confused. Was there something he did wrong? Was it power? And here's where one of the true themes of Chainsaw Man starts to reveal itself. Companionship. You see, throughout the story, Denji and Power form a close bond. I'd even go as far to say that they love each other, but not in the sense of romantic or a carnal love, but something more spiritual and foundational than that. The same way you'd love a friend or a family member or someone who you understand on a deeper level. It's functionally a bond formed because you understand each other on a level no one else really could. Throughout, Denji is presented with these more physical and superficial forms of attraction and love. Breasts, intercourse, and so many other forms of seductive things. I mean, Makima throughout the story manipulates Denji with that kind of stuff after all, but it never makes Denji feel more complete. It never makes him any more fulfilled. Well, I think Fujimoto was showing us that a genuine connection can matter more than these things that we all think we need. Denji is someone who doesn't fully know what he wants. He wasn't raised traditionally, and more or less he has only himself to lead. Thus, he is obsessed to an extent with the things he thinks he wants, but he can't be introspective enough to understand why he wants it. I believe all people, or at least most, desire a deep connection with others, and Chainsaw Man explores this, the way our different connections can be formed, kept, or even sometimes used against us. Connection is sometimes a dangerous thing to even create. It's not inherently bad to form one, but we could see it through Denji that we must want these things for the right reasons. Differently to most other shonen heroes, Denji is forced to question why he wants what he wants. It's not as simple as being Hokage or being king of the pirates. Denji wants to live. And that's a far more complicated thing to even consider. In a way, I think Denji reflects many of the confused and scared young men who live in the world right now. Hell, it's probably why I connected so much with the series, especially with it coming out during lockdown. I too am pretty anxious about what connections I'm making based on our modern world because it can feel incredibly isolating. Sure, there's the internet and public spaces, but the older I've gotten, the more cautious I am about who I trust and who I choose to speak to. Maybe that's just my lived experience, but I've met many people who feel the same through many different walks of life. So to see that Denji, despite the fact his situation is far more extreme than mine, still struggles with these ideas is comforting. Throughout this arc, we start to see these ideas bloom. Hell, the Bat Devil himself has a girlfriend. These connections form the very fiber of the world of Chainsaw Man. And in many ways, connections form ours too, to some extent. And if a bat devil or a man with a chainsaw for a head can form a genuine, real connection, then why can't we? And yeah, that's all they really wanted to talk about. I genuinely love the series Chainsaw Man, and maybe would want to talk about it more in the future, but I'd have to reread a lot more parts because I really would want to go even further in depth. But Chainsaw Man has always been a series that's been very thematically interesting to me. It's very different from most shonen, and not the way of me trying to sound hipster or anything like that. Like, genuinely, it's not like any other I've ever read, and I've read quite a few. And honestly, I think a lot of people sometimes try to toss it aside as just violence or, borderline porn or whatever hell I've seen other people call it. And I think they're kind of missing the forest for the trees. I think there's something a lot smarter here that Fujimoto's trying to tell, and from the other things I've seen Fujimoto write, and I have seen quite a few of it, he's someone that doesn't just try to make something that's cool. He seems to be the kind of guy who actually wants to say something, usually. But with all that being said, I'll see you next time.